Rivers region. No thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Senator Ludlam. Welcome back, Mr Hughes. There have been a number of recent incidents at the Ranger site that have involved errors in water infrastructure and hose attachments at the project. And you'll be aware, obviously, that there was legal action against ERA in 2005 around processed water being hooked up to the drinking water circuit, and miners at the ERA plant in Kakadu showering and drinking uranium-laced water. Can you just tell us about these more recent incidents involving errors in water infrastructure and hose attachments at the project, but also designated contaminated vehicles being in the wrong place on the Ranger project area?
I wouldn't be able to tell you specific details about the incidents. All the incidents that you're talking about were categorised as minor incidents. There were no actual events of contamination of the water as a result of some incorrectly placed fittings on potable water hoses. Those things were picked up before there was any cross-contamination of water.
Were they reported to you by the company?
They were. They reported to the Mine Site Technical Committee members, which includes us.
So ERA in 2005 was the only NT miner ever convicted in breach of their operational requirements. I'm sure you'd agree it was a pretty serious breach that saw those workers contaminated in that way. How is it still possible that these kind of things can occur, even with the remediation efforts that the company made after that incident in 2005?
I imagine with all the precautionary efforts that are made, there is still room for human error. Indeed.
So the latest incident, as I think you're pointing out, didn't involve the processed water system, but can you clarify whether audits that included measures to mitigate against connection of incompatible systems should have safeguarded this incident? And how can we prevent this kind of thing happening in the future?
The problem is that you can't continually audit every part of the site all the time. And so these fittings can be attached to hoses in a few minutes, and there's nothing you can do about that.
There's nothing we can do about it?
Well, presumably the precautions that have been taken have worked because there have been no further contamination incidents.
It's now approaching, on a related matter, it's now approaching a decade since a dedicated Senate report into the adequacy of regulation at Ranger was produced by whatever the Environment Committee was called then. Can you tell us what the implementation status is of all those recommendations made that relate specifically to Ranger in that report? I think it was around 2003.
I wouldn't be able to give you the details of that. The Senate Committee report was tabled. There was a government response to the Senate report, and I don't know that there was any instruction to take action as a result of that.
That's interesting. Okay, thank you. So there were a suite of recommendations that identified a pattern of underperformance and non-compliance relating to the uranium industry. And to your knowledge, no action was required to be taken as a result of those recommendations, or certainly none that have crossed your desk.
I think that a large number of the recommendations that were made as a result of that report have been covered off because it was logical to undertake that work.
Logical, okay. Could I ask you to take on notice any specifics you can provide listed by recommendation that your office is involved with or has been involved with since that report was tabled? And just for some context, it's my belief that that report has been almost entirely disregarded, that those recommendations haven't been taken up at all by anybody. If you have a different view, could you provide us, and I'll put this to the Minister in a moment because I recognise some of these aren't in your domain, but can you provide us with any evidence at all from the OSS's point of view that any of those recommendations have been taken up?
Did you have any specific recommendations that you would like to discuss?
All of the recommendations in that report that relate to Kakadu, all of them. I mean, it was a comprehensive piece of work.
We will need to take it on notice.
Yep, understood. Minister, good morning.
Good morning.
Could I put that to you? Some of this would be out of Mr Hughes's bailiwick. The 2003 recommendations of the Senate Environment Committee into uranium mining in Australia Can I get a reading from the Environment Minister through you as to which of those recommendations has been disregarded and which were acted upon in the 9 years since that report was tabled?
Happy to chase up to see what the government response was and
Yep.
then where our government response is. I was happy to take that on notice for you, Senator
Much
Ludlam.
appreciated. Thank you. Mr Hughes, can you just inform us, first of all, whether or not you're aware that ERA has publicly expressed a desire to continue mining operations on the Ranger project area post the required January 2021 cessation of mining date? Are you aware that the company is intending to proceed past their licensed closure date?
I'm not aware of any formal statement to that effect. However, there has been a general discussion that ERA is interested in undertaking further mining on the site beyond that date.
And on what basis is that awareness formed? Just through press reports? That's what I'm referring to.
Yes.
Yep, okay, thank you. But the company's not formally or informally raised that issue with the OSS?
No.
Okay, just aware through press reporting, thank you. Does the OSS have a view on the issue of continuation of mining past the closure date?
No.
Okay, you don't have a view. Can you just describe for us what is the process required for any extension to the current lease at Ranger? Just step us through procedurally what will be involved.
The lease at Ranger is actually an authority issued under Section 41 of the Atomic Energy Act. The Atomic Energy Act is administered by the Department of Resources, Energy and Tourism, and they would probably be better able to tell you the answer to that question.
I think they're only actually listed to appear before us for a period of about 15 minutes. I think my chances of being able to ask them that question are minimal, unfortunately. Would your office have any role in approving a lease extension, or would your role kick in after it had been signed off?
Our opinion on matters pertaining to environmental management and protection would probably be sought by the parties involved in making decisions on any proposed lease extensions.
All right, you'd be part of the government's process in informing a decision?
I would imagine so.
But it's your view that the Atomic Energy Act would actually need to be amended in order for mining to continue on that lease?
No, I didn't say that. I said that there are provisions, I understand, in Section 41 of the Atomic Energy Act that stipulates the way you would go about extending the authority.
Okay, but you're not aware whether or not the Parliament would need to be involved in any fashion?
No, I'm not aware of that.
You're not aware? Okay, thank you. What would any extension of operations, which I think we could safely assume would have to involve the opening of an underground mine to feed the mill that's there, mean for the mine closure and rehabilitation plan?
The plan would have to be adapted in order to cover the eventualities of underground mining.
That's all?
Sorry?
That's all?
Yes?
Could you tell us from your point of view what the status is of ERA's planned shipment of uranium oxide to Russia, whether the first shipment has occurred or if not, when it's expected?
That's not something that falls within my purview normally, and I'm not able to answer the question.
Okay. Can you just give us an update then of the discussions regarding the potential extension of the role of the OSS to cover uranium mining operations nationally? I think I peg this one at you every time I see you. If you can just give us an update.
I don't actually have an update on that. There may be other people elsewhere in the department that can update on progress with that.
Minister, can I lob another one your way on notice? Minister, sorry to disturb you. Good morning.
How can I be of assistance, Senator Ludlam?
I'm just asking you whether you could provide us, whether the Environment Minister could provide us an update as to the current status of discussions regarding the potential extension of Mr Hughes' role and his office to cover uranium mining operations nationally.
I'll take that on notice and see what the Minister would like to add.
Much appreciated.
This would be a good time now to move to other senators who are seeking the call. Senator Betts.
Thank you, Chair. Senator Ludlam referred to a 2005 incident and then continued to say that these types of incidents are still occurring. Can I ask, have there been any other prosecutions since 2005?
Not to my knowledge.
And have there been any other incidents since 2005 that could be described as being of the same seriousness as that which ended up in court in 2005?
I wouldn't categorise any incidents that have been reported to us as being of a similar degree of seriousness.
So would you agree with me that it is not necessarily representing the situation to suggest that the 2005 incident, if I can describe it as such, are still occurring? Because we've now had 7 years without such an incident occurring.
There has certainly been no recurrence of incidents of that magnitude.
No, thank you. And in relation to the most recent, if I might describe it as such, minor incident in relation to the hose connections, tap connections, that was, who discovered that?
I believe it was an operator at Ranger, and they stopped work immediately.
So Ranger itself recognised the issue and dealt with it, and as a result, on your evidence, no contamination took place.
That's correct.
Have any further monitoring bores been installed, to your knowledge?
Yes, you may recall there was a report known as the Weaver Report, which was a study undertaken by URS in the vicinity of the Ranger Tailings Dam a couple of years ago now. All the bores that were recommended in that URS report have now been installed, and Ranger is now monitoring 101 bores in the vicinity of the tailings dam on a quarterly basis.
So 101 bores, because they committed to doing that last year, and I just wanted to check up to make sure that all those extra bores have been installed.
That's correct.
Thank you. Now, do you believe that ERA is following the correct regulatory approvals for the Ranger 3 Deeps exploration decline project?
ERA followed the correct approval method. There was a referral made. There was a decision made that it was not a controlled action, and then the proposal was assessed by the Mine Site Technical Committee, which is the appropriate fashion of doing that.
Thank you. And in your view, is the environment surrounding the Ranger project area continuing to be protected against any detrimental impacts from mining?
Yes, and I've said that in my annual report each year.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Senator Ludlam?
How much
Couple
more
of
time?
minutes.
How much more time do we have?
Well, we're set down in the schedule to go till 10 o'clock.
There's no chance we can bring the heritage vote back, is there?
No.
Just checking.
I can ask some more questions.
Yeah.
Move on.
I thought I was doing Senator Ludlam a favour.
Yeah, you are, but I'm not necessarily in that game.
I'm happy to...
You were cooperative, Senator Abetts, and that I was surprised.
Yeah, what has gone wrong here? Yeah. Mr Hughes, it was confirmed recently at an ARAC meeting that ERA had received federal approval for an extension to operations at the Ranger 3 Deeps project. Now, you're not the approving authority, so I'm not putting these questions to you in that capacity. But when granting this approval, I'm just interested to know whether you or your office raised concerns about, or whether you made a public submission to the regulator as far as the 3 Deeps expansion was concerned.
To date, the only approval that's occurred to do with Ranger 3 Deeps is for the exploration decline.
Yeah, and did you have input into that decision making?
We provided input into the regulatory process.
Yeah. Did you have a view as to whether that should have been considered a controlled action or not?
That's not my role.
But presumably if you thought it should have been a controlled action, you'd have put that view.
That's right.
So it could have been your role, but you thought, in this instance, you thought it was not appropriate that it be considered a controlled action.
We actually provided comment on the environmental protection aspects of the proposal.
Okay, that is not at all an answer to the question that I put to you. Can you just provide us with an update then of that activity? Has the exploration decline begun construction?
The box cut, which is the part of the decline through the weathered zone, down to a depth of, I think, 20 or 30 metres, is under construction. It commenced, I think, at the beginning of May, and by the end of this month, that will be completed, and the actual tunnelling will commence at that stage.
Okay, so the box cut is just the entry, as it were, to the tunnel?
That's right.
Surface site works?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know how long the company intends to take to complete the decline? Is it intended to be completed before the wet season?
The decline to be completed before the wet season? Yeah. No, it won't be.
How long is that intended to take?
The decline will take into next year.
Okay. Yeah. And do you have people on site observing and watchdogging, as you were, those works on the surface?
Periodically. We don't watch it constantly, but we have routine periodic inspections that we conduct of the site, and usually when there are officers on the site doing those routine periodic inspections, they look at the progress being made on any major activities on the site.
Okay, two more from me. If in the instance that the company intersects mineralised ore on the way down, I think you've told us in the past they're not expecting to, but if they do,
yes.
Are they required to notify you immediately, or your office?
They're required to stockpile mineralised ore separately.
But sorry, that wasn't the question again that I put to you. Are they required to notify you immediately if they do intersect mineralised ore?
No.
They're not. Okay, so how would you find out if they were stockpiling mineralised ore?
They will notify us.
They will? Are they required to, or just as an act of courtesy you'd expect that they will?
I would expect as an act of courtesy that they would advise that they have had to take on the contingency of stockpiling ore separately.
Right, okay. And finally, I've asked you a couple of times, the process for uploading real-time water quality monitoring data to the web, either from your office or the company reporting those results directly. Can you just give us an update of where that's up to, and then I'll let you go?
Nothing's really changed since last year because there is no water in the stream during the dry season.
Right.
And so since we last met, there has been no additional flow.
Okay.
When the wet season commences and flow commences in the stream, we will be running our routine monitoring program as usual.
Yep.
While we talk about real-time monitoring, there is a need for us to validate the material, as I've mentioned before. So we'll be placing our updates on the website usually a week in arrears.
A week in arrears, but that would that give us like 5-minute sample data, or what I'm interested to know? I understand why you would want to clean the data or whatever it is that you need to do between collecting it and publishing it,
Yes.
but on what period of time will the reporting actually be?
It's for all intents and purposes continuous because there's a continuous trace, if you like, plotted on a graph to represent that.
Yeah.
Ludlam, I think that concludes the time allocated for the